Hi, so today I want to get back into doing some fun stuff with JavaScript, and we are going to start building up some capability to allow us somewhere down the line to perhaps modify the role center functionality so that we can make it, I don't know, maybe a little prettier, a little more attractive, a little deviation perhaps from Microsoft Blue. So let's have a look at how we do this. Right, so what we are going to do now is create a number of buttons on our Business Central page. But unlike what we have done in the past, we are going to use a single control add-in. So to use our guest room analogy, in the past, we have created a single control add-in on the page. The control add-in is the guest room. And into there, we have put a single JavaScript element, being a button or a picture or something like that. And that corresponds to the guest. So we have one guest being the JavaScript element in one control add-in being the guest room. This time we are going to put a family into the guest room. We are going to create a number of buttons, and they are all going to be contained in the same guest room. So 3 guests, 1 guest room. How do we do this? Well, we start as always with the definition of the control add-in, keyword control add-in, followed by a name, dynamic buttons, followed by the physical parameters, and then followed by the related files. And in this case, I am not using startup script. I'm going to do everything through one script, and I will still use my style sheet, and I'm using that for 2 things. So let's have a look at the style sheet. The first, I'm defining the body. So when my control add-in is placed on the page, it will have the background color powder blue, and that will make it clear to me that the control add-in has in fact been created, which is very important. And it will then be ready for me to place my buttons. And then I have defined a number of formatting options for the button. Most important to note will be the cursor. So I'm creating a pointer. So when the user moves their mouse over my button, the pointer will change to a finger. And then I'm giving it nice round corners so that it looks like a button. Okay, then the last thing in our control add-in, we have defined the interactive elements. So I have got 2 events called more buttons ready over there, and another one over there called callback. Remember that an event is used to trigger an action in Business Central from JavaScript. So JavaScript initiates these actions. Procedures, on the other hand, are used to initiate an action from Business Central to JavaScript. So this will be JavaScript responding to something that is being sent from Business Central. Let's start with the first one. The event, more buttons ready. So that is activated from this command over here. Microsoft Dynamics.nav invoke extensibility method, more buttons ready. So that is the key word here, more buttons ready, calls back this, and that will trigger this activity over here. Pretty straightforward, just a single command. What does that do? So when the JavaScript script launches, it is going to trigger this in Business Central. I have 2 variables defined, an array of 5 elements containing text and an integer. And I'm then going to assign values to my array, just 3 of them. The text values, customers, vendors, and items. Then I'm going to loop through my array using n as my loop counter. For each iteration through the loop, I'm going to trigger this command. So current page, dynamic buttons, which is the name of my user control over here. And that is going to trigger the procedure add button. So it's going to go, here's my control over here that refers to dynamic buttons, which is defined over here. And it is going to run this procedure. It is going to pass the variable over here, button names, element n. So the first time it loops, it will pass the word customers into my definition here. And that in turn is going to cause the procedure add buttons to execute. What does add button do. So this is going to receive the variable button name, which of course will contain either customers, vendors, or items. I'm going to get my control add-in elements, which is sitting on my Business Central page, and I'm going to put that into a variable called placeholder. Then on my page, I'm going to create the element called button, and I'm going to refer it to the element type button. So this is not a name, it is the element type, and I'm going to assign it to a variable. I just happen to be using the same word. Then once I have got my button created, I'm going to give it an ID, button name, which of course is the thing coming in from my procedure call. I'm going to set the text content, in other words, what is displayed to the user from within the button. And then I'm going to tell it what to do when the user clicks. So onClick is a built-in event which belongs to an element of type button. So when they click my element, which I have just created, it is going to then run this function over here. And that function is going to invoke a call back to Business Central. So what is that going to do? Well, that is going to go using this word here, the string callback. That has to correspond to the event over here, callback. It is going to pass one variable, button name. Note that it is enclosed in square brackets because it is an array. Just because I only have one element, it is still an array. So that is going to pass back to my definition here, this value, and that is going to cause the trigger callback to run from the Business Central page. What is that going to do? Based on the table name that comes in, I have got a case construct here. It is going to use a table ref to open a specific table. So if the value that comes in is customers, it is going to set my table ref to the customer table, otherwise to the vendor table, otherwise to the item table. Over here, I'm going to calculate how many records I have in my table, and then it is going to send that back to JavaScript. So what is that going to do? It is going to, using my control add-in, dynamic buttons, which refers to this definition, it is going to call the procedure getCount, and the procedure getCount is going to happily accept my table name. It is going to accept the number of records which has come from here. So this is going to send to that procedure the table name and the record count. The procedure is going to cause a function of the same name in JavaScript to run. So this is it over here. And that is going to receive the variable table name and record count. It's going to retrieve my button using getElementById. And it is going to then set the text content to table name plus the record count. So next to my button name, which would have been set to, say, customers, it's going to insert the number of records that I have calculated from Business Central. And then lastly, just for fun, no particular reason, just because we can, we are changing the color. Okay, let's see how that works. Let's try and compile this. And we need to pull this over here. I'm going to click here first just to get my company name. Here you will see our three buttons, customers, vendors, and items. And if I click on customers, what I am expecting it to do is to pass that customers record count back to JavaScript. So when I click on it, it is going to open the table. It is going to calculate how many records there are, and it is going to send that back to JavaScript, vendors and items. So to recap, when I opened my page, it ran this instruction here, which created the control add-in. The control add-in is my blue block over here. I'm going to refresh my page. So this line created this pretty blue block over here. What that did was then cause this area called more buttons ready to run. which created the 3 buttons: customers, vendors, and items. In other words, these 3 things here. There's the names, and then ran this instruction: current page, dynamic buttons, add button, and passing the variable button names in. So that would have been customers, and then vendors, and then items. So that's the first part of the process. That would in turn have caused the buttons to be created and to set the on-click event. So as each of those buttons is created, it would know to trigger back to Business Central an instruction to run something. That would have caused the trigger callback to run over here. And that would have then, based on which button I pressed, which it will know from this variable over here, it would have caused it to open the table, calculate the records, and then send it back through the procedure get count, passing 2 variables, again the table name, followed by the record count, back through my control add-in definition over here. So as I click my buttons, as I click customers, it is going to be running the callback function with the variable table name set to customers. Click. And it has then gone and retrieved 334 records. If I click on vendors, it will do the same. If I click on items, it will do the same. Okay, I think that's enough for today. Please go and experiment and have some fun.